Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. It's a special edition. Spring football is here today, day one of spring football practice for University of Texas. Welcome to the chat, to everybody that jumps in and joins us today. Yes, Clint Sutton, you were first today. Sorry, John Gonzalez. Clint beat you by just a little bit. Joining me, Anwar, Alex, Jason, everybody other than myself at Texas football practice today to be able to take notes, to make thoughts and see things and whatever the case may be. Do us a solid, like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that jazz. Even get notifications if you'd like to. Anwar, I'll start with you. We'll go around the room. Your day one first big impression, if there was one, was what?
Well, there's two things that kind of a day one thing. One that I saw too was what I heard. But the thing that I'm about to post on Orangebloods at any moment now, and from my visual was I saw Quinn and Hudson splitting reps, and I thought to myself, okay, that maybe that doesn't mean anything for this limited portion. And then after practice, talking to Sarkisian. He basically said that they split reps, through practice. So knowing that Quinn Ewers was splitting on day one, it's kind of the thing that Jason had talked about, earlier and in one of the previous Modcasts, and I think even Alex had even alluded to. He thought it would be like the best idea. So just seeing that on day one was kind of one of a big takeaway for me.
Jason, what about you?
I hate to just piggyback, but it's the exact same thing. When I got to practice, the first thing I know, first off, I asked somebody, I was like, where's Quinn Ewers? Like, we have a Quinn Ewers sighting. And pointed my camera lens on Quinn. I wanted to get some pictures of him. But as they started going through reps, and it was just handoff reps, okay, to the running backs, I was like, oh, Quinn's the first one up. That's pretty interesting. But then they started doing some other drills, and, it was Hudson and then Quinn. So clearly they're going back and forth on, even on the simplest of reps, who was going to be first. But I saw, Anwar, your tweet, and I think that's the most interesting thing from the day, that Sark said they're going to basically split reps throughout spring camp, right? So, I mean, he's the next 5 weeks, he's already got mapped out, and that's been a talking point for us guys. All four of us is like, how are they going to divide it? Is it going to be Hudson Card getting one and Quinn getting two, and then they're going to transition? Is it going to be even? Is Quinn eventually going to maybe get all the first team reps? We got our answer man on day one, and Sark's usually pretty forthcoming about that stuff. So I tend to think that he's being truthful and he's going to stick to his guns, and we're going to see a pretty even split among these quarterback reps, which to me, that's the biggest news of the day from day one.
Alex, what about you?
Well, I mean, I have some other thoughts, but just to hit on that too, I think now now that Sark is, whether or not Card was out there first or Ewers was out there first, or whether they were splitting. I mean, I got there early, and I always like to go and get there early and see as much practice as I can even before they let us in, because they really let us in for a pretty useless part of practice today. There was more stuff you could see just before and just after during those periods. And it was definitely, for the part right before the media availability, when I was watching out there through some binoculars, it was Card with the first group, and it was.
Shouldn't admit that, by the way.
I'm standing there right in front of Bianco and Thomas. They don't care. So I'm not sneaking around, but it was kind of so. I think that during the day of practice, they were probably switching up, but at this point, it doesn't matter, because Sark has already set the narrative. He's like, these guys are going to split it up through camp, and so that's just what it's going to be. It's going to get back to those guys, and they're going to say, all right, well, this is how we're going to live. As far as other things, I thought it was kind of a big deal that Christian Jones has apparently moved to right tackle. That was something that I wasn't necessarily expecting. And I don't think that means quite as much for Andre Carrick as it does for just what the future of, that opens up a whole thing where we have a lot of to talk about what's going to happen at left tackle if they're already putting Jones at right when Carrick is the only guy who they have to put it left in his absence. I have a bunch of other thoughts, Ketch, but that's probably the two that I don't want to go on and on and on.
Well, Alex, as someone who wasn't at practice and relied on the visuals and the photos and the reports from all three of you, other than the quarterback thing, right, which is undeniable. It's the thing that we'll probably spend a lot of time today talking about. Anwar, in my head, I was thinking about the conversation that you and I had earlier this week on Monday about the quarterbacks, and I guess which was just yesterday.
Well,
and,
we've recorded like 3 videos. So.
Yeah, I know. It's like, wait a minute, that was just yesterday. That was 24 hours ago.
Like crazy
but you start trying to ask yourself what the pathway for Hudson Card to being able to beat Quinn Ewers out is. And I lean back to what we talked about yesterday, which is I think barring Quinn Ewers being absolutely turnover prolific, I think today kind of just re-cemented that. There's not much of an edge other than a little bit of experience that Hudson Card brings to the table. And it will be treated slightly different than Hudson Card and Casey Thompson were a year ago. I wonder what lessons were learned. And Alex, other than the quarterback stuff, what you said about the offensive line jumped out to me like a sore thumb in potentially a good way. Like I'm not even quite sure. I think, and you would probably agree with me on this, I think they've made the wise move with Christian. I think his optimal position, if he's going to play tackle, is to play on the right side. So they've made a good move for, in my estimation, for Christian Jones. And like you said, it opens a pretty huge, it's like a Grand Canyon sized door potentially for someone else to come in, one of these true freshmen, and take the left tackle job, which is its own can of worms to do an entire video on of like, what do we expect of an offense that might volunteer itself to like put a true freshman out there at left tackle. It also makes Andrej Karic like, if you wanted to make the case that his development is one of the 5 most important developments on the team in this offseason, I'd have to spend some time to like really think about it. But on first blush, it's not crazy talk. Like suddenly either a true freshman potentially is starting at left tackle, Alex, or Karic has taken some really sizable steps. Either way, it's an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah, well, with Karic, we've talked about it, just the juxtaposition when you look at how he and Major, and Majors when they both came in after I guess Cosme was out for the last game and then sat out for the bowl game, and we saw Karic and we're like, wow, this guy played 2 full games. He didn't allow any disruption. His feet looked great. He was working with Donald Hawkins, who we all know and love what he's been doing with these young offensive linemen. Hawkins is just talk about a guy he's bullish on. I mean, he still is bullish on Karic, even after last year where it was really bad. But we've always talked about how, man, that year with Karic last year really spiraled down the tubes after he was thrown to the Wolves versus OU. And I'm not sure that we can really weigh that year whenever that's how he's kind of started. That's how things started for him. He got off to a bad start, man. And so, yeah, I think he's a guy, if we can monitor him through the course of spring ball, see how he looks. He certainly has the feet. He certainly moves well. He's got the balance. For him, it's just about power, man. He can't let these guys convert inside out moves on him. We can watch it over and over and over again versus OU. But I think that it also goes on to say, like, people are, the people who told me I was crazy to say that DJ Campbell might come in and be able to start at left tackle right off the bat. They're probably started shaking their boots a little bit because it's, it's like you look at some of these guys, you look at the DJ Campbell, you look at Kelvin Banks. I can kind of look at all these offensive linemen coming in. I'm like, well, who's the most ready out of all of them?
Yeah.
And it really does seem like DJ Campbell is. I don't, for all I know, they wouldn't even consider him at left tackle. But, man, it's just like that thing being like that. Certainly, Andrej Karic is going to need somebody to push him. I don't think it's going to be number 79, Max Merrill, who's currently backing him up. So it's a lot of questions. That's why we have a lot of time between now and summer to kind of talk it all over, right?
Jason, it's interesting. Christian Jones at left tackle wasn't a huge success a year ago. Like, nobody is saying he was all Big 12 or anything like that. But he's kind of the devil that right? If he's at left tackle, then there's a question of, well, what you have, and if somebody else is better than him, then that's a win. How do you view left tackle all of a sudden, knowing that, look, Christian Jones can always be the break glass when there's an emergency option. But assuming that today wasn't just, a whim, and that they don't tomorrow have him flip back or on Thursday have him flip back to the left side, what's left tackle look like for you in a world where Christian Jones is on the right? And is that suddenly, even it may have already have been that, but in your mind, on the list of things that we talk about regarding question marks on this team, where does that one rank? And Anwar, just when he's done, jump right in on that piece of the discussion.
Yeah, my first thought, and I'll give Anwar my first slowdown. All right, it's one practice. He may be Christian Jones may be back on the left side on Thursday. So maybe they were just dabbling today during the open periods. But you said it. In Christian Jones was okay last year, right? But there was a lot of room for improvement. Look at Alex shaking his head. No, but there was. I think I said, maybe in the last Modcast last week or 2 weeks ago, I said, hey, if there's a lineman I could see taking that jump, maybe it'd be Christian Jones. He was very inexperienced last year. The guy looks like $1 million, but yeah, I don't really know the answer, Ketch. I don't know how to process that, them moving him to right tackle from day one. Is that because they think Andre Carrick made significant strides? Is that because they think they've got these reinforcements coming in from the freshmen and they want to get Christian Jones maybe slated because maybe that's where he would be playing anyways on the right side? I don't know. Alex, you mentioned Donald Hawkins, D-Hawk. I remember talking to him in him being bullish on Andre Carrick. I remember talking to him when Carrick signed with Texas or committed to Texas. And the things he was saying about Andre Carrick, everybody in that class was worried about the guys that didn't sign with Texas and
Brockermeyers.
Thank you. He didn't say he didn't say him by name, so I wasn't going to, but Alex certainly will. He just said, "Hey, this guy is as good as this 5-star that everybody's drooling over," and he trained Tommy Brockermeyer some. So, we haven't seen that kind of production yet. Of course, Tommy Brockermeyer hasn't done anything yet either, but he thought he had that kind of potential. So maybe they think Andre Carrick is tapping into that kind of potential. And frankly, maybe they just think he's a better fit at left tackle. If not that, maybe they think the guys coming in are. I don't know what the answer is, but I do agree. I know that's a story Alex will be following very closely in the coming practices. And, I think to me, it'll be interesting to see if Christian Jones stays at right tackle exclusively, or do they kind of move him around, or even maybe shift him back to left tackle more permanently? I don't know what the answer is after one day.
I mean, the thing is, because there's after last year's offensive line performance, I don't know how many guys you can really stand on the table. That person is untouchable, right? I mean, once you get past a Junior Angalau, and maybe Jake Majors to a certain degree, I think, you can – there's nobody else that you really stand on the table for. So if they decide like they're going to move Christian Jones to right tackle and have Carrick at left tackle for the spring, and then see what happens when some of these other guys get here in the summertime, I know, Jason, you say like pump the brakes, slow down, and I'm just like, well, slow down for what? Like who should we be slowing down for? And I'm like, I don't know. I can't see anyone to slow down for other than, the guys that who will be coming in. So
I just mean they might move him back on Thursday is what I mean by that. I mean,
yeah, it's possible, but I'm okay with the shakeup. I'm okay with, there's nothing I saw last year that says you cannot make a move and try to make this thing better. Everything I saw last year says go for it. You do whatever moves you need to make necessary to make this happen.
Really only can go up from here, right, Omar?
You would hope.
Well, and Jason, to that point, like I was literally, if any of these freshmen were on campus that we're talking about as potential, if they were spring enrollees, it's not as big as the quarterback discussion. But if DJ Campbell were on campus right now, or Kelvin Banks, that's the second most watched conversation piece all the way through the spring. Suddenly is what's it look like at left tackle. It'll be interesting to see what happens on Thursday, Saturday, and beyond. It's a big opportunity for Carrick, though. They are giving him a platform to stake a claim to that job. And if he's not able to do it, then when the freshmen show up in August, they'll be able to say, we gave you every opportunity. I'm fascinated because he's a guy that I had ranked 15th in the state on my Lone Star recruiting list back in 2020. He's a guy that Texas, I would have said in 2020, they need that guy to hit. They still need that guy to hit. It can't just be this freshman class. And Hayden Connor, another guy that we haven't mentioned, but is the fifth starter there, a little bit younger, 1 year younger than Carrick, but he's got a chance. He has the pole position going into this offseason and into the season as being given the first chance to take that job. A couple of guys I'm really interested in. Anwar, way earlier ago, Caleb Chapman mentioned, I'll pull it up on the screen. He was just one less about his specific question and more about, other than the quarterback, Quinn Ewers, and some of the things we noticed on the depth chart, everybody wants to know about all of the transfers on day one. So let's just go around the room and any spare thoughts that we have on Isaiah Neyor or, any of the guys, frankly.
I can give you what Sarkisian said about each of the guys who are transfers. And then if Alex wants to jump in on some of the observations, then, feel free. But he described Jaleel Billingsley as a guy who looked natural and very comfortable in that role. I saw him playing on, not only tight end, but, getting a lot of special teams work as well. So I think he looked good out there. He said, and really the conversation is really about like the, new guys more so than transfers. So I'll throw in some of those guys as well. But, Terrence Brooks, Ryan Watts, he described them as guys who had a great days of practices. Isaiah Neyor, I said he looked comfortable during his first spring practice. Said he was happy to see Jaden Blue that was out there. Says he needs a little bit of time to look at the film for Cole Hudson, Dre Bledsoe, and Aaron Bryant. And then also needs to do a little bit more review to determine Larry Turner, Good, and BJ Allen. Said it looks like their eyes were maybe misplaced at different times at practice. So they just need to see maybe what some of those, challenges were. But that's kind of like a first day rundown for some of the new guys.
You'd expect Ryan Watts and Isaiah Neyor to kind of make a smooth transition, right? These guys have been through the college game before. I was really focused on trying to take pictures of guys like Quinn Ewers and Isaiah Neyor. And I mentioned this to Anwar when I was leaving. And I'm not yelling fire in a crowded theater by any means, but Isaiah Neyor, first off, he was kind of, when they were just doing the wide receiver reps, he was third or fourth guy to go, which I thought was a bit surprising. And then he did walk off one time, but he didn't go talk to a trainer, but he didn't come back for 10 minutes. I'm like, I don't know what happened to him. Who knows? Maybe had a stomach ache or something. I don't know. But, we didn't get to see much of him bottom line. I saw him personally. I think I saw him take one rep before we had to leave. But, I did snap a couple of pictures of him. Big physical specimen. I mean, certainly looks the part, but didn't get enough to formulate much of an opinion personally from what I saw.
Yeah, if anybody just goes and looks, I haven't looked at it, but I saw Neyor there. If you go look at Jason's pictures, I'm sure you'll see just the thighs on that kid. It's really unbelievable, his thighs.
How big were his hands, Alex? Did you have a chance to see?
My eyes were just bugging out.
Not as big as his thighs, Anwar.
All right, so just a couple thoughts I had. Jaleel Billingsley, I thought he looked good. Here's the thing: he doesn't look any better than Jatavian Sanders. Jatavian Sanders has put on some good muscle mass. He's running with the first group. He's being targeted. I saw him targeted twice by Hudson Card, catching passes. He's wearing number 0, which is kind of I guess that's an interesting. I guess Ewers came in and wanted his 3. I wonder if Ewers had to buy it with all that NIL money, if he can buy that number 3 from him. But yeah, just keep an eye out for number 0, man. Jatavian Sanders looks really good. I know that I don't have as much on Jaleel Billingsley except saying seeing him standing next to JT. That's not. I don't see much difference in these guys. And Billingsley's definitely an older dude. As far as some of the other just transfers, Ryan Watts, I believe he's number 6. Is he number 6? Onward, do you have your thing? Is Ryan Watts
I've
number
got
6?
mine.
Yeah, number 6 is right
Yeah,
out.
so
him and Malik are 6, by the way.
If you watch during pursuit drills, we didn't get to see any team drills, but during pursuit drills, Ryan Watts was out there with the ones. So something to keep in mind there. It was him and Deshaun Jameson as the first two cornerbacks out there during pursuit drills. That's usually pretty telling. Another thing that's pretty telling, and this was not the case during pursuit drill, and I know this guy was a transfer last year, but Devin Richardson is one of the guys who I think gets an award for saying, like, whatever Ketch says, an attaboy award.
The attaboy award.
Yeah, for the work that he obviously put in during the offseason. He's last year, Devin Richardson, the linebacker transfer out of New Mexico State, came in much smaller than anybody expected. He didn't get any playing time. He didn't get any work in. And when they did go to that pursuit drill, it was DeMarvion Overshown at the will, and it was Jalen Ford at the mic. But for all the other linebacker drills, it was Overshown working with Richardson to start. And then the next group out would be Binda and Jalen Ford, and then whoever else behind those guys. So that's always pretty telling, man, when they have those two guys working together, playing off each other in these position drills. In those position drills, it's like you don't get those guys working together and vibing together if maybe there's not at least packages where they're both in there together. So I keep an eye on Devin Richardson because not only because of those clues, but also and during stretches when they do whenever they do the dynamic stretch. And they stretch and then they kind of walk across and stuff like that. Richardson was one of the first guys that out there as far as doing the dynamic stretch. And then the only other thing about a transfer or a newcomer, I would just say maybe just newcomers. I thought that Cole Hudson carries his weight really well because he's listed at 309. He does not look like he's 309 pounds. And then the other thing was Justice Finkley. I thought that he looked like he fits right in just from just the stockiness and stuff. He's a little shorter. People had always talked about how he's a little bit shorter than you would think. I don't think it's anything to worry about. It's fine. I don't think he looks as short as, say, like Puna Ford looked when he was out there compared to the others. But I don't think that Justice Finkley is 6'2". And that was something that people had said, people who got their eyes on him in live evaluations. I believe, Jason, you had kind of said, hey, with Justice, he's a little bit shorter than you would think. But definitely when he's on the field with a bunch of other college guys, you can kind of tell, they have a little bit of height on him. But he does look, thick, strong. He definitely looks like he's built for the part.
I think that would be the thing, Alex, that most impacted his ranking at the end of the day. If people wanted to know why such a good player wasn't quite rated that highly, I think it's as simple as that even in an in-person evaluation, when you see him kicking ass, it's hard to project exactly what that means moving to the next level. Speaking of guys, 5 stars.
Yeah, I'm sorry, real quickly, Ketch. If there's one guy who I don't really worry about that, it's Justice Finkley.
Yeah.
His effort and mindset and aggressiveness, it's gonna compensate for a little bit of lack of height. So I wouldn't worry too much.
And
about
like I said, in my notes, I literally written down like Justice Finkley looks like he fits in, like he looks like a bull. Yeah. But I just didn't. But he's like there's a small height thing, but
he's not the tallest dude in the world.
Yep.
I'm looking at Jason's photo. Look, there's a lot of thigh conversation in the chat after the comments. I don't want to necessarily talk about Jatavian Sanders' thighs, but he looks. I'm flipping through photos, and if you were to go through there and say, find me the guys that were ranked as 5 stars coming out of high school, I stop on Jatavian Sanders and go, that dude. He feels like a guy that probably deserves an attaboy award today, only because it's clear he's taken to the offseason. And Anwar, a year ago, it was hard to find him getting real game reps, and yet from what I read in the reports, he was a guy that was involved with the ones, and clearly that doesn't make a big difference now. Like, they got a lot of guys are going to get reps. it's hard for the dude that takes that guy's job. He better look like $1 million because I don't know how that guy doesn't get on the field.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely been putting in the work, and last year being kind of a learning year. But I also know that during the offseason, after Quinn had committed, Jatavian Sanders was one of the guys that worked out with Quinn in kind of a small group of receivers, which was him, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington. There was a couple other notable guys, and Jatavian was the guy that I kept hearing looked really, really good in those small, intimate settings. And then was wondering what kind of chemistry that him and Quinn may develop. But I had heard that he's taken a lot of good strides. So the things that Alex was able to observe sounds like this might be the beginning of him taking like that next level, because it's the weird thing. It's the guy that we always get asked about, probably more so than anybody else. Once you get past the quarterbacks, it's always about Jatavian, what's going on with him because of the 5-star status. But for him, it's a good start to the spring.
Guys, last 5 minutes of the video before we wrap things up. We'll take questions if you've got them in the chat session. Anwar, I wanted to go right back to you. Jay Lee asked about Troy O'Mary. How is it possible that he's still not healthy? Seems odd that a healthy 19-year-old isn't, moving along faster. Was Sark asked about O'Mary at all? Like, I haven't had a chance to read your report yet. Was there any comment from him at all about?
He did. He kind of glossed over the injury report portion when he was asked about it, because he was asked about injuries. He's like, "Oh, there's no injuries," and then he started being asked about specific guys, and then he would kind of acknowledge it a little bit. So he didn't really get into the injury thing today. As far as Troy, why is he not still healthy? I mean, he's had the answers.
He's not healthy.
Yeah, I mean, it's as simplistic as 2 significant knee injuries. And when you play that sport, I mean, he's had 2 major ones. He had the ACL the first year, and then he had another significant one last year that he's still recovering from, and they're not going to rush him back. And so he's a guy that you got to hope that summertime / training camp, he comes back and can actually stay, healthy. But I mean, it's not uncommon for guys to have lingering things in particular areas that, that kind of lead to being injured for a long period of time.
Hey, Anwar, was it definitely a different knee injury, a different injury than that he? Because I remember
that's the thing. I haven't gotten the specifics on did he re-injure the first ACL if it was the second.
Remember he came back in practices.
No, whenever he came back to practice, it was that same knee. Yeah. Remember,
he had the brace on, and then he injured it, and we were like, "Uh-oh!" So I mean,
because he took it off at one point
for one day, I think.
Yeah.
So I mean, it may just be a case of bad luck where he re-injured this. Maybe he tried to come back a little too quickly. And I don't know. We're obviously speculating.
They're going to err on the side of caution with him for sure.
Yeah, but it's a long time to be cautious. But if it's an ACL injury, he tries to come back a little too quickly, re-injures it. That's a whole other 6-9 month setback potentially. So.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, especially not, with technology nowadays, usually you're not out for this long period of time for ACLs. Like back in the day, yes, that was like a year-long thing. It's like Tommy John surgery. But ACLs, you've seen guys recover a little bit quicker than this.
I mean, I actually talked to a high school kid this weekend. I was covering an event, and he tore his ACL late in his season last year, and he's back out running routes already. He's a wide receiver. So, I mean, this is a high school kid. I mean, so
I think everybody's going to have to be patient with Troy. And I think 2023, I think this year, try to get him up to a level where you can proclaim him healthy. And then rather than rush to get him on the field out of a need, you probably need to see if you can just get him to 2023 feeling good about his body. And then I think, there's still that guy's got a lot of eligibility left. I think everybody's got to treat him like he's a true freshman. He just arrived. I don't know. They're probably Jason. You and I on 5 fingers can probably list and maybe not even need that many, who've had worse bad luck starts to their career than O'Mary. Like Jordan Shipley would be up there, right? A guy that 2 years in a row wiped out by significant injury. I mean, his body's not holding up. You just have to hope that with more time that can happen. I want to go to Jason and Alex with this. One of the last questions before we wrap things up. You guys, because everybody can start thinking about a parting shot. We'll wrap up our day one practice discussion here in a moment. Bobby Hansen. Don't you have a friend named Bobby Hansen, Jason?
Like one of my best friends. He spells it differently. Yeah, Bobby Hansen. Yeah,
I thought so. It's an interesting question.
He's an Aggie, though, so he wouldn't be on this.
I was like, is Jason got boys in here, like sneaking in questions? I know we can't get into physicality. It's day one. So let's not overreact to like, is this offensive line more physical? However, I'm going through the photo gallery. I've got all kinds of different varying opinions on all of the linemen that you took photos of, Jason. You think they look bigger? Like, you know, I hate to ask that question, but Bobby's asking it. It's us eyeballing guys and saying, oh, they look like you can real easily run into this is the greatest offseason in the history of offseason discussions. So with that out of the way, did you sense anything different about size?
If I'm being honest, no. It's not something that before this question was asked. That doesn't mean they're not bigger. Alex probably pays a lot closer attention than I do. There were a lot of offensive line pictures because we're stationed in the end zone.
Linemen.
Huh?
I said there's not a lot of offensive linemen.
Well, there's that, but we're stationed in the end zone, and they're right in front of us, whereas the quarterbacks and receivers are 60 yards away from us. So, but I didn't come away from it. You know, I haven't poured through the photos and maybe analyzed all the offensive linemen, but I didn't come away from it thinking, whoa, those guys look bigger. I thought that last year when I saw Christian Jones. I was like, whoa, I didn't realize how big Christian Jones was. But that wasn't in my thought process today. And maybe Alex, like I said, probably focused on those guys a little more than I did. So maybe he'll think differently.
Yeah, I don't think differently. I think you lose Denzel Okafor, you're not going to you lose Denzel Okafor and Derek Kerstetter, you're not going to look bigger. Those are big guys. Those are big guys. Hayden Connor's a big dude. I wonder what I didn't look to see what he weighed in at. What did he weigh in at? 76.
I think he looks like he's been in a program.
6'5", 320. Yeah, so I mean he's a pretty big dude, but
he
he's
actually looks more not soft. You know what I mean? Like he hasn't gotten bigger. His body's lost some softness.
I'm telling you, dude. Like I follow him on Twitter and Instagram and stuff. Like if you watch some of his Instagram videos, man, that guy's been working. He's been working for sure. He's not a soft dude. So yeah, I think that I didn't notice much of a difference, and you couldn't have noticed anything about any sort of physicality today. They were working on inside and outside zone combination blocks, and they were just going up against dummy pads. It wasn't anything that we could take any physicality stuff away. Not today. Even though they weren't shoulder pads and helmets. I guess they weren't shoulder pads and helmets, weren't they?
No shoulder pads.
Okay, so yeah, we could it was just Hayden Conner. Hayden Conner looks like he wears shoulder pads. Jeez, man.
I got a good picture of Hayden Conner. I'm looking at it right now. Who's honestly one of the nicest kids you'll ever meet. He's studying aerospace engineering, and even as a recruit was super polite and always gave me time when I wanted. Just a great person, right? And it looks in this picture like he saw me taking pictures, I think, so he kind of looked at me. I sent him the picture of DM'd. I said, it looks like he wants to murder me. So I'm like, he's like the nicest kid ever, but he looks pissed off in this picture. I don't know if he's having a bad day or what, but yeah, I was able to get a good picture of him and several of the offensive linemen for people who want to check that out.
Real quick, my parting shot as we wrap things up on our day one Orangebloods Texas football Longhorn channel coverage of Texas football, spring practice day one. I did notice Jalen Garth a little bit, like just that he was out there, right? You want to talk about guys who's had to come back slowly from major injuries, and it's taken a little bit of time to get going. I don't know that Jalen Garth is a guy that in my brain I'm even counting on to be a future contributor based on the last few years and him battling back injuries. But because Jason's photo gallery was so incredible. So incredible. I'm looking at Jalen Garth right now, and I'm reminded, like, oh, yeah, if he's healthy, he's a guy that is an interesting physical prospect with some upside. And he looks like a guy that's gone through a couple of years of a strength and conditioning program. And every time I say, sometimes you got to give these guys 2 or 3 years to develop, I'm looking at the picture that Suchomel took of Jalen Garth, and I'm thinking that's what it can look like when a guy gets a couple of years in the strength and conditioning program and then maybe starts to become ready to play. I don't know if Jalen Garth is truly ready to play, but he looks like a guy off the hoof that could play if it comes together for him. Anybody want to go next with a parting shot?
With Garth, if you ask Coach Flood, he'll probably tell you it feels like it takes 1 or 2 years for him to even figure out what he's doing on every play. Coach Flood gets tilted with Garth for sure. I think he did look better today for sure, though, for sure. I think for me, I just thought it was interesting. One of the things, maybe a parting shot, just something to keep in mind. Baron Sorrell, number 88. He looks like, whenever they ran out and they did that first pursuit drill thing, they had Ovi Ogwofu over there at the buck end, and they had Baron Sorrell over at the jack end with the first group they had, and they had Alfred Collins actually working on the defensive tackle, Keandre Coburn at nose. Alfred Collins was working completely with the inside guys today, so take that for what it's worth. Like Jason says, it could change. And Ovi, whereas last year he worked a lot with the linebackers, today he was working with just the defensive ends. One defensive end, too, I wanted to shout out to. Maybe we'll give one of those Attaboy Awards. 55, David Abiera. He's been getting some good work in. I don't know if Jason got a photo of him, but if he did, take a look at how that guy's grown. But I just thought it was interesting. Baron Sorrell there with the first group, like we said, just the first day of practice, just a pursuit drill, but it was the closest thing that we had to a team drill. And you have to remember that he was showing real signs of he was showing real flashes last year, some signs of things that he could possibly do well, but he petered off there kind of towards the mid-season swoon, wherever teams sort of realized this guy just does not have the core strength. And if we double down on him, we're going to be able to just crack down, and we're going to be able to take him completely out of the play if we just get the tight end to double down here with the tackle on this guy. And if he's able to kind of get some core strength, I think that he's another guy. This team is dying for anybody to come out of anywhere to be any sort of presence off either edge. Baron Sorrell was a guy that had kind of slipped out of my mind just because of the core strength issues last year, even despite the fact that he flashed. He looks bigger. He looks like he's at least in the mix, maybe to contribute somewhere. So maybe just a name to keep in your back pocket and keep an eye on.
Suchomel, final thought?
Nothing too exciting or interesting. I don't. Just kind of glad to be out there, man. It was, it's always good to get out there and watch them practice. Like Alex, wish we got a lot more access, man. It was a very brief access today, and there's a helicopter flies over my house here. But they made us put down our cameras during the special teams period, which is probably about a third of the work they did. So I don't know, man. I just never understand the lack of access. I'm not going to go on an Alex type rant, but it's a bit frustrating when some of us, it was an hour-long drive, I think probably for damn near all three of us with traffic to get to campus, and then we get to watch 25 minutes, and then certain people want us forced out of there. So a bit frustrating that we have to stay in the end zone. Why in the world can we not go around the stands to midfield and get a better vantage point? I don't know. It's just the amount of control is just almost overwhelming at sometimes.
Well, that's why that open practice, I don't understand it. The open practice where it's open for everybody in the world, I'm just like, I look at these idiots. I'm like, why would you go to the media check-in and be stuck under Bianco's thumb where he tells you the whole time you got to sit your ass in the end zone? It's like, I'm not going to be beholden to this dude on an open practice. Like I'm like the one guy in the whole place who can be told what to do.
Yeah. Come on. Even today, if they don't want us on the field, I get it. But listen, we could be on the field and not get in their way. We'll stay on the sidelines, but we can't even go. We have to stay in the end zone. We can't even go around to the 20, 30, 50-yard line. And the defensive players are literally on the other side of the field where it's, when you factor in the end zone and the distance, they're 130 yards away from us. Alex was smart and took his binoculars, but it just, I don't know, man. It's a bit frustrating because And this is me bitching and moaning, but yeah, I mean, it takes some effort for some of us to get down there, and it'd be nice to have more than 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever.
Let me shout out Bill Biddick too in the chat. He's saying that he'll tweet CDC asking for more access for you. Please, and just don't just ask for more and anybody who's listening, if you could tweet him, don't just ask for more access. Just ask for better access. Ask for like a better periods. Let's come in for some team periods, man. We just want to report as best as we can for you guys, and we want to give you the best information that we possibly can. So if you'd like to have more information, yeah.
I mean, listen, we'd love it if they opened every practice, but if you don't want to open more practices, that's okay. But for the times that we do get to go, let us at least have a little bit of decent access, man.
Yeah.
Wow, Anwar, we've now reached 50% capacity with unhappiness, just disgust towards access. Parting shot, make it 75.
I'll avoid it. It is what it is. Football coaches always overthink it. They're the most superstitious stuff. In NFL, they act coy with their injury reports, and they in college they act coy as if you say a guy's limited, and then all of a sudden that person shows up on a Saturday and Sunday, the other team's gonna be like, oh damn, we didn't prepare. I read on Orangebloods this guy was limited, and shit, we never prepared for an alternative option. We're just gonna pack up the trucks and leave. Like, no one does that. They just overthink it too much. It is what it is. But I was gonna say I thought Terrence Brooks looked good in a portion of practice that I was able to see. I thought he was able to have a bunch of good little breakups, in a couple of drills. I thought just good quick hands. And it's a little note, but I would say that he was very impressive for me. That's kind of my parting shot.
So let me also. I'm sorry. Can I also just say I don't agree with Anwar that it's a Sark decision to not give us the access. I think it has everything to do with John Bianco and the media relations department. So I don't think it has to do with Sark. I think he'd be fine with letting us be there for a little bit longer. Like it's been coach after coach after coach after coach, and it's been the same thing. Like
I will say this:
so cockamamie.
My experience with college head football coaches is if Sark cared and he wanted it, it'd be done. And that it doesn't get done means he either doesn't want it or he doesn't care, and either of those two things effectively shuts down our ability to have access. And Anwar, on the pass breakup stuff from Terrence Brooks, someone on Orangebloods said, that can't be true. I thought the NCAA outlawed that a year ago. Like, they thought after watching this team that you were no longer allowed to break up passes. So nice job, Terrence Brooks, for getting a shout out on day one for doing a thing that last season Orangeblood subscribers were convinced had been outlawed by the NCAA. For myself, and Alex, Jason, and Anwar, hey, do us a solid if you haven't done it already. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll be doing videos all week long. But thanks for joining us for a little while, for a little live discussion on day one of Texas Spring Football. We'll see you soon.